Hey everyone, welcome back to the Patriots Report, part of the Bleav Network presented by FanDuel. My name is Christopher Price, the Boston Globe and BostonGlobe.com. It's time for an emergency podcast because literally, probably 15 or so minutes ago, the Patriots made it official. They swung a deal for wide receiver A.J. Brown, the longest developing deal that I think we've seen in quite some time. The Patriots give up a draft pick, 2 draft picks, 1 first rounder and a 5th rounder down the road, and they get back A.J. Brown. I have some initial thoughts on this deal. I know here we're going live, obviously, on YouTube, and I'll be able to see some of your comments that pop up here along the way on StreamYard, but I want to kind of go to these things first here. I firmly believe, first and foremost, that this is the biggest and most impactful trade the Patriots have made for a wide receiver since prior to the 2007 season. That's almost 20 years. You guys remember the run up to the 2007 season, they traded for Randy Moss and they traded for Wes Welker. And then they took off on the most unbelievable offensive season that we've seen around here ever, I think. Now, I don't believe that A.J. Brown is going to have the same sort of overall impact on this offense that Randy Moss and or Wes Welker did. But there is the same sort of electric vibe now around this passing game, around this group of wide receivers. When you include Romeo Doubs and you include A.J. Brown, along with a group that had really good numbers last year. And look, a lot of those numbers were due to Stephon Diggs. I think that's important to note. But you also have Mac Hollins. You have Kayshon Boutte, and we're going to talk about Kayshon Boutte a little bit later on. But Boutte, you had, Kyle Williams, Pop Douglas. This is a really good group now. We were all, like a year or so ago, we were all sitting here wondering about, can this passing game, can Drake May make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what with this group of wide receivers? And now, a year later, thanks in large part to the foundation that they created last year, this is one of the strongest and most dependable groups on the team, position groups on the team. You add Romeo Doubs, you add A.J. Brown to a group that's already pretty impressive. And I know, again, we have to take into account that Diggs is not here anymore. And I think, obviously, I know I talked about this with my podcast partner last week. If Brown doesn't happen, what do you do? Do you bring him? Do you bring Diggs back? But that's obviously, that door is closed now. You're going to have some real important decisions to make. We talked a little bit about Kayshon Boutte there. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing with him, because I think there's a little bit of positional redundancy there. And I don't know if this is the type of guy who would draw a lot in trade. And I wrote about this. I just put this up on social media. I think that if he has a good spring and a good summer, maybe he's a Labor Day trade candidate. And maybe if Doubs is who you think he is, and if A.J. Brown is who you think he is, and is able to put up the good numbers, they're not going to play a whole lot in the preseason. So let's just kind of put that to the side. But if they look good in camp, if they're healthy, particularly A.J. Brown's knee, and we're going to get into A.J. Brown's knee here momentarily, his right knee. But there's all sorts of questions here moving forward. But I think right now, you can really, really you can make the call on this. This is the most important trade for wide receiver that they've made since prior to the 2007 season. And I think it gives a sense of optimism about this offense. Not that there wasn't already a sense of optimism about this group, but you look at this wide receiver core, it's very impressive. We talked about this with Hogan a little bit earlier on, last week, whatever. We've been talking about the A.J. Brown, the potential for an A.J. Brown deal over the last couple of months. So you can go back and listen to some of those podcasts. But the bottom line here is this team is better. This offense is better. This passing game is better now that A.J. Brown is in the building. Brown is 6'1", 226 pounds. Physically, we talked a little bit about the possible positional redundancy there with Kayshon Boutte. The guy who he reminds me of physically, just physically here, is Josh Gordon. Now, Gordon, when he was here in New England for a couple of years, 6'3", 225, great, really physical, fast, checked all the boxes. Now, look, A.J. Brown does not tote the same sort of baggage to Foxborough that Josh Gordon did, and I think the Patriots wouldn't make this sort of move for a guy like Brown if he did have the same sort of baggage. But look, he is a guy who is a big physical wide receiver. He's great with 50-50 balls. He's great with the possession catches, the red zone catches, the jump balls in the red zone. I think he adds an extra dimension to this passing game that you didn't have last year. Now, in addition to that, he's also really fast. He ran a 4.4, I think it was a 4.49, if the numbers are correct. He ran a 4.49 in the 40. So he's got the speed, he's got the physicality, and he's got the veteran savvy. This is a guy who's been in the league for a few years. And he adds that to this passing game. This is a really good receiver. This is a really good ad. Now, we're going to get into some of the reasons why he may have been available, because guys like this don't just fall into your lap for no reason. You know, Howie Roseman doesn't give up on guys like this just because he wants to. You know, there was a lot of talk out there about the physical, some of the knee problems that he'd suffered, that A.J. Brown had suffered over the last couple of years. Maybe the fact that he wasn't a great fit, that he and Jalen Hurts kind of went like this over the last year or so. They used to be really good friends. But the bottom line is, this is a really good receiver. This is a guy who's had a high level of production as long as he's been in the National Football League. He's going to turn 29 later this month. So you can talk about the knee and you could talk about the age, but I think that it's best for all concerned that he get a new start, the Eagles get a new start. He just kind of gets a chance to hit the reset button after a year where things kind of fell apart for him in Philadelphia. Offensive coordinator kind of falling out with the quarterback. And look, in every situation like this, they're going to choose the quarterback. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was made available. But look, the knee thing is a real thing. This is a guy who I think it was last year, he talked about having to have his knee drained twice a week back in 2024. The knee problems first cropped up in 2020. It was one of the reasons why he was made available in a trade from Tennessee to Philadelphia in 2022, I Bleav. And so these are all reasons why he was made available. This is why he was there. But I will say this. Having talked to the guys in Philadelphia, talked to some reporters in Philadelphia and some guys who know A.J. Brown a lot better than I do, is that he continued to play. This is a guy who is a gamer. This is a guy who answered the bell each and every week. Didn't make excuses physically for his own situation. Didn't beg out. He took some Veterans Days, and I would expect to see him take some Veterans Days here moving forward with this offense, because Vrabel knows how to handle these guys, especially the former Tennessee guys. We saw that last year. Robert Spillane, Jack Gibbons, Harold Landry, even some Vrabel guys who really didn't start as Vrabel guys like Morgan Moses. People are going to freak out a little bit because he's on the injury report a lot over the course of the week. Don't worry about it. This guy's a stud. This guy's a veteran. He knows what he's doing if he needs to take a day off. And I think that kind of got mixed up in the conversation last year in Philadelphia. And again, a fresh start is really the best move for all concerned. The Eagles drafted a wide receiver. They got a new offensive coordinator in there. Like I said, they're always going to go with a quarterback. Franchises are always going to take the side of the quarterback over the wide receiver. So that's not a huge surprise either. So when you look at all of the conversation around him last year, the knee, the perceived or real narrative that he wasn't a team guy, that he called out the offensive coordinator, he called out some of the, basically the offensive framework. It really wasn't working in Philadelphia. The guy can play. The guy's a stud. He is, man. He goes out, he answers the bell every single year. Even last year, the age of 28, when he had the production dipped, he was still catching 1,000 yards. This is a guy who can compete at a number of levels. The short stuff, the intermediate stuff, the deep balls, the 50-50 balls, red zone. This is a guy who checks all the boxes. And this is an offense that needs that last little piece. They're not going to, I know, I hope you guys know that they're not one guy away. This is not a case of A.J. Brown putting them over the top and they're going to win the Lombardi next year. No, that's not the case. And we'll talk a little bit about this. The one question that I've had, that I've been obsessing about really over the last couple of weeks is this team better now than when they left the field at the end of Super Bowl 60? And I'm here to tell you that they are. The A.J. Brown deal puts them over the top. It does. They still have some questions about depth. I think they need another linebacker. And they're hoping for someone to kind of emerge in that running back room as that third option. Maybe it's Lane Larison. Maybe it's Terrell Jennings. Maybe it's someone else. I don't love the kick return position. But 1 to 53, this roster, this is better than the group that left the field at Levi Stadium following Super Bowl 60. We talked about the narrative around A.J. Brown that kind of developed at the end of the year last year. There was an ESPN story from Jeremy Fowler that pointed to some of the occasional friction between Brown and Jalen Hurts, the problems with the Eagles' offensive coordinator, Kim Patullo. Brown said last year, you can't keep slapping a Band-Aid on, or can't keep slapping a Band-Aid over Philadelphia's issues. And he was later caught online saying that the year was a shit show. And I think that all kind of got mixed up. And, you can argue that he's not a bad guy. I would say that that's just a very high level of frustration when you look at what he's been able to do over the course of the year, when you look at his work as a captain, as a leader, as a team guy. I think it all kind of just fits together. And I wouldn't necessarily hold that against him because, again, it's a clean start. It's a clean start for the Eagles because they went out and they drafted Mekhi Lemon. They're looking to remake the wide receiver position, and it's a clean start for the player. This is a certified Vrabel guy. A.J. Brown has spoken on many occasions of the appreciation, the respect, the admiration that he has for Mike Vrabel. The two were together in Tennessee. And the fact that he is there now in New England leads me to believe that you have another apostle ready to spread the gospel. Not to get all evangelical on you guys this afternoon, but this is a big moment, and I think it calls for some flowery language. You have a guy who's going to be able to continue to spread the gospel of Mike Vrabel in that locker room, to the new guys, to the young guys. You're a young wide receiver. You're going to be able to walk up to A.J. Brown. You're going to say, what's Vrabel talking about? And he's going to be able to break it down for you. This is a guy who spent a long time with Mike Vrabel. Been through a lot of games with Mike Vrabel. And there are no guarantees in life. And I understand that. But this is as damn close as I can think of as a guarantee that you're going to get when you talk about a guy like A.J. Brown coming into New England. He's going to give you your best for several reasons, not the least of which he's a pro's pro. And he has a long and abiding relationship with the head coach. And I think it's all part of the conversation. It's all it's one of several reasons why they went out and got him. It was a position of need. They added another layer of depth, but they went out and they got a guy who is a certified Vrabel guy. A lot like Kevin Byard, a lot like Harold Landry, Robert Spillane. These are all certified Vrabel guys. And I think he joins that group. They should be very happy to have him in that locker room. The coach should be very happy to have him in that locker room. The guy whose life is going to change a little bit, I got two guys for you here. Two individuals whose lives are going to change now moving forward. First, Drake May. Drake May should be over the moon because A.J. Brown is going to be able to give him an edge in the passing game in the same way that Steph Diggs gave Josh Allen an edge in the passing game all those years ago back in Buffalo. We talked last year about how could Steph Diggs bring Drake May along the same way that he brought Josh Allen along all those years ago with the Bills. And I think he did a lot, but I think A.J. Brown's going to finish the job. And he's going to be able to make him Josh Allen, basically, for lack of a better term. He's going to make him Josh Allen. And I think the Patriots should be very, very happy that their young quarterback got another guy. The other thing, too, and this is the flip side of the coin for Drake May, it's all on your shoulders now, man. No excuse. That offensive line holds up. You stay healthy. You got the weapons around you. You got the options, man. You are stacked. You got a couple of really good running backs. You got 3 or 4 quality veteran wide receivers you're going to be able to lean on a consistent basis. That line holds up, you're going to be in every game. You're going to be in every game, and the level of expectation is going to be ratcheted up another level. And like I said, it's all on the quarterback now. There's no reason for him not to be successful. And I'm not saying there was a chance before, but look, with what he has now, with the weapons that he has in the passing game, the weapons he has on offense, the background in the Josh McDaniels offense, the fact that he's now finally with the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back years should make him very, very happy. And look, we talked to him earlier this week, or I'm sorry, last week. There's a comfort level there that didn't exist his first couple of years in the league. Now that he's with Josh, now that he's got guys, now he's feeling a little comfortable. This is the year for him, and he's got to take it to the next level. There can't be any more giveaways like we saw during the playoffs. And look, you can argue a lot of that was on the offensive line, and I think that'd be completely fair. But you can't be throwing bad balls. You can't be giving the football away. It's the simple fact, because you have so much talent around you. There's no excuse now. So let's raise the game just a little bit. The other guy who I think his life is going to change, and we referenced this before, is Kayshon Boutte. Now, it's not exactly a one-for-one switch when you talk about Boutte and you talk about A.J. Brown, because there's a height difference, there's a weight difference, but they do an awful lot of the same things. And I'm going to be fascinated to see, first of all, how Boutte responds to this move. If he has anything to say, if he's, pops off on social media or whatever. I don't think he will, because in my experience, he's been very straightforward about his feelings when faced with stuff like this. There was the gambling stuff where, to his credit, he was very upfront about the mistakes that he made and the issues that he had and how he worked really hard to overcome those issues. Now, it might be a different deal when the rubber hits the road and he walks in there. And look, one of the things that Diggs said last year that stuck with me is like, there's a lot of dogs and only one bone, and we're okay with that. There's even more new faces now with Dobbs and A.J. Brown. And I think Kayshon Boutte, going into the last year of his contract, is going to be a fascinating study this year. I really do. Because I think there's some talent there, and I think if he continues to ascend, he could be a 60, 70, maybe even an 80 catch guy in this league. But to walk into a crowded room, he does have the history with Drake May, which will work in his favor, especially early on. I just remember last year where he was very straightforward when he said, look, there's going to be some guys who are not going to be around here come Labor Day. And I'm paraphrasing here, but that was basically the gist of what he was saying. He's very cognitive. He's very self-aware. And he has no problems admitting the fact, the situation that's in front of him. He's not just going to blow it off. And so, again, that's going to be one of the reasons why I'm going to be fascinated to see how he responds going into spring workouts, training camp, if he feels the pressure, if he feels a sense of urgency. If he competes, they're going to make room for him. But if there's a trade partner out there that needs another layer at wide receiver, he has a good spring, good summer. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a Labor Day trade candidate moving forward. They gave up a 1, and that always makes me a little bit uneasy. I do, I don't care the talent level. I don't care if you're talking about the second coming of Lawrence Taylor, Tom Brady, Jerry Rice, name your Hall of Famer. It always makes me a little bit uneasy giving up a number 1. But this is a team that I think has done very well this offseason so far. It was very clear that this was a team that was not just one player away. And they acted like they knew that. It was not just one player was going to put them over the top. They need to continue to build this thing brick by brick. And if this represents for them going all in, I can appreciate the level of conservatism that goes along with this, even giving up a number 1 pick. Because it was an area of need. It's a guy who had a past relationship with the head coach. So the expectation level is going to be really clear. The communication is going to be really clear. And he had some flexibility under the cap. So, again, giving up a number 1 worries me a little bit. But under these circumstances, I think I'm okay. And this is the last thing for me. That, again, I've been kind of obsessing over this question, really kind of thinking it over ever since they left the field. And, we go through the draft and go through the pre-draft process. We go through free agency and, we come all the way up to June 1st here. Is this team better now than the one that left the field that got steamrolled after getting steamrolled by the Seahawks in Super Bowl 60? Are they better? Have they improved? And I would tell you that A.J. Brown puts them over the top when it comes to me saying yes. That they still have questions, again, depth at linebacker, depth at defensive tackle. They're going to be asking a lot of Corey Durden this year. Depth at running back, kick return. But these are the questions. They're not quite first world problems, but you can look at this team. As I said after the schedule was released a couple of weeks ago, there's a path to 10 wins for this team and a path back to the postseason. Then you get to the postseason, anything can happen. If you're playing your best football, December, January, who knows? This is a double-digit win team with A.J. Brown. And given the level of difficulty in this schedule when you compare it to last year, I think this team is better. I think this team is positioned to go back to the postseason. And again, you never know. They had a historic run of luck last year, not just with the schedule, but when it comes to staying healthy. They played their best football at the best possible time. And again, that team had problems. That team had really an Achilles heel that was exposed by a good team like Seattle in the Super Bowl. But I think when it comes right down to it, this is a better team than the one that left the field after Super Bowl 60. Again, I'm not saying, A.J. Brown's the guy who's going to put him over the top, because you never know what's going to happen. It's going to be fun watching this all play out, though. I do. And I think that we're headed for a team that is going to win double-digit games. You're going to see A.J. Brown. You're going to look. This is the other thing, too. And this is the last thing I'll say before I wrap up. There are going to be games this year where A.J. Brown's going to get 2 catches for 15 yards. But you're going to see Romeo Doubs 7 for 100 and 2 touchdowns. Last year's team was really good at managing that, figuring all that out at the wide receiver position. It's going to be a challenge, but I think this team can replicate that, because I think they're better off now than they were at the end of last season. Got a couple of quick questions. Got one quick question from Barry. Oh, my buddy Barry. Chris, Patriots wide receivers have certainly come a long way in just 2 years. Should be another exciting season. Yes. We were all clutching our pearls last spring and summer because we didn't know if Steph Diggs could perform at the level that he performed at over the course of the year. We didn't know if Kayshon Boutte was going to be able to perform at the level that he performed at over the course of the year. Pop Douglas, up and down, but ended on a good note. He's had a good spring, by the way. We didn't know if Drake May was going to be able to take his game from here to here. Now we know all these things. And now the goal in that wide receiver room, led by wide receivers coach Todd Downing, is to take it to another level. I'm not expecting the 2007 offense. I'm not expecting Wes Welker and Randy Moss and Dante Stallworth kind of numbers out of that group. But again, I'll come back to my initial point that this was, in all likelihood, the most seismic trade at the wide receiver position this franchise has made. Trade, not draft, but trade, the wide receiver position this franchise has made in almost 20 years. And I think the passing game is going to reap the benefits going into 2026 because of it. All right, we're going to have a couple of different podcasts this week. Going to get a reaction from Hogan, probably a little bit later on, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, to all of this. As a wide receiver, I want to know exactly what he thinks about this remade wide receiver room that is going to be led by A.J. Brown going into the 2026 season. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, like, and keep downloading the episodes of the Patriots Report right here on the Bleav Network. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.